and why we were out break. Dan Dugan, that covers the Giants for The Athletic, said Brian Dable just told them Andrew Thomas will not practice today. John Michael Schmitz, their rookie center, will not practice today. And guard Shane Lemieux will also not practice today. It sounds highly unlikely Thomas will play on Sunday, and definitely a question with Schmitz. Justin Pugh also won't be ready. So with all of that, the Giants' glorious offensive line that we've seen so far this year, Jay, is it over for Daniel Jones as a starting quarterback in fantasy?
Well, I think it is until they get a viable offensive line, because we've just seen this season that there's no time, there's no chance, and yes, he's making mistakes, but you're going to make mistakes when you just have no time for receivers to get open. And now he goes up against, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb and Wilkins and all these guys. Like, that is a real pass rush in Miami. The secondary has struggled a bit, but I mean, you just get to a point with an offensive line where it just ruins everything. And until they fix that, I mean, do you see any hope, Connor, for some of these younger guys?
No, here's the larger issue, too. They're playing Miami's offense that's going to look to get back on track, and the Giants' defense has been horrible this season under Wink Martindale, and why that relates to Daniel Jones and the offense is pass rushers are pinning their ears back against this very weak offensive line. The Giants are very pass-happy, predictable, especially without Saquon Barkley, and Jay, it's just compounded into a disaster for the offense as well.
Look, he's been under 200 passing yards in 3 or 4 games. He's kept it somewhat afloat because of the rushing, but 0 passing touchdowns in 3 out of 4 games. 63% of Daniel Jones' fantasy points this entire year came in that second half against Arizona. I mean, honestly, like, I'm a QB 20, and that's in a week in which we have 4 teams on a bye, right? I mean, like, so I'm going to close it out just to, get back to the premise of the segment. I'm going to close it out on Daniel Jones until we see some improvement. And I'll just say very quickly, like, Jay, I'm shocked by this. I quickly glanced at this. The line in this game is 48.5. I want the under in this game. Unless they're thinking it's 48.
You know how that's
unless you want to know 49-0. Unless you think it's 49-0. Like, I don't see how the Giants score, because not only is the offensive line brutal, but and Daniel Jones has no time to throw, and we don't expect Saquon to play in this game, but also, like, none of their guys are getting open. Like, I mean, like, we haven't seen the development of Jalen Hyatt, right? I mean, you see a moment here or two from Isaiah Hodgins and Darren Waller, but honestly, like, help a guy out. Like, it's just the receivers aren't getting separation. He's got no time to throw. Daniel Jones looks a little shell-shocked. Like, it doesn't look good.
It doesn't.
It's
I guess
bad.
The counterpoint would be that Miami can score 21 fewer points than they did 2 weeks ago and cover the total by themselves. Just this offense is just so insane that they can get to high 30s, and at that point the Giants only need to get to 14 or something to cover. But I agree, it does seem a little high. I just think this Giants offensive line situation is an outlier that is really difficult. Like, they gave up 10 sacks to Seattle, who don't have a good pass rush.
But the difference, and I realize that we're talking crazy numbers here. The difference in the 70-20 game is that Denver actually moved the ball. I mean, again, like, I know, like, well, they won by 50 points, but still, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, as bad as Denver is, that's at least a competent offense compared to what the Giants are, and I just don't know that they need to put up the kind of point. Like, I think the Giants' defense is bad, but I think it's better than the Broncos' defense.
Yes,
and
for sure.
And the Giants' offense is much worse than the Broncos' offense.
Yep,
Again,
so
you're talking about a 50-point victory. I get it, and it's 70 points. You only need to get to 49, to cover this. But I'm just...
So the line is 11, the total being what it is. The projected score is like 30-19. I agree. It's hard to see the Giants getting to 19 in this game.
Well, they couldn't get to 1 in week 1 versus the Cowboys. So what are we even talking about?
But they got 3 against Seattle, right?
3
So
against Seattle.
that's an improvement.
There you go.
This Dolphins defense, right, is 5th against quarterbacks in fantasy. But 2 of those quarterbacks was Herbert and Josh Allen, the top 2 quarterbacks. And Daniel Jones ain't them. He definitely ain't them with this offense around him. So there's not really much for me to add to this. I got him at quarterback 25 with the bye weeks.
Right,
This is going to get bad. This Dolphins defense
You hate him even
pissed
more
off.
than I do. You hate him even
Dolphins
more than I do.
defense mad. They going to go get him. So obviously I'm keeping it closed.
Yeah, I had him at 20 just because I think they're rushing there a little bit. One last question for you guys. I'm just curious here. Because, as you know, the Giants are the only team in the NFL that has had 3 primetime games so far, where they've been outscored by, like, I don't know, 75 points or something in those 3. Well, anyway, so this week it's a normal game. They play Miami, but then next week they play the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football right here on NBC. And
Can we flex?
Very exciting. I don't think it's too
allowed to
early to
flex.
flex, unfortunately. We're stuck with them. But here's my question. My question for you guys here is just internally. And you
I
can turn
think
off
the
the
Bills
cameras
will
here
win
for a
that
second.
game.
Do you think, yes, I like the Bills to win that. Do you think when we promo that, when NBC cuts the promo first, this week on Sunday Night Football, are the Giants anywhere in it, or is it just Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football?
Hopefully a Von Miller return.
Right, Von Miller comes back, right? And just they don't even mention who they're playing. It's just all about,
That'd be slick.
Yeah, that's what they should do. The Buffalo Bills against, we're not going to tell you who. Just tune in to see who they play.
How did America let this happen? How did they give the Giants? It's not like the Giants were projected to be an 11-win team.
It's tough. All I know is if we've got to figure out a way, guys, and let's put our heads together. We're all company men here. Let's put our heads together and figure out a way to get Taylor Swift to that game. Because if she's at that game, over 27 million people watch Zach Wilson.
Yes.
Again, I'm just telling you. That's what we need.
Highest rated game since the Super Bowl, I believe.
I mean, it was ridiculous, right? I'm just telling you. So let's figure that out. But that's my question. We'll just be interesting to see what the promo people do with that one in Week 5. But we got a great game this week.
We do.
Dallas, San Francisco is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10.
Our next one here, Dameon Pierce. He's got the Falcons on deck this week. Lawrence, it's been kind of a tale of different weeks for Dameon Pierce. The good news is weeks 3 to 4, he's averaging 21 touches a game. The production's been just okay, but the volume's been phenomenal. Is that enough reason for you to keep this one open right now?
This one, I'm not going to go with it this week. Although he's running back 26 for the season, which is actually a little better than what you would expect based on like how the numbers have looked, how their running game has looked. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the Falcons are 6th best against running backs in fantasy, and they're coming off a game where Travis Etienne ran 20 carries for 55 yards against. So, and I don't even. The Texans gonna be able to move the ball versus this team. I don't even know that they'll need to try to do it on the ground. They'll be able to do it in the air. So, I don't like that it took them 24 carries to get to 81 yards, and that's because they were always leading the Steelers by double-digit points. So I'm gonna keep it close for them, but I'm closing it.
I would keep it open just because Laramie Tunsil's coming back, Titus Howard is coming back, even though Kendrick Green is done and on injured reserve. At least they get those two guys back. They're 2 tackles, they're 2 best offensive linemen. And I just think that Stroud is good enough that he's going to be in scoring position and he can fall into the end zone. And if you've got a guy who's going to get 18 carries and has a good chance of falling into the end zone, and also got a decent reception last week as well and can be used more in that game, I think there is some upside for Dameon Pierce.
Back-to-back games with over 25 receiving yards for Dameon Pierce. To your point about he's starting to get a little bit involved in the passing game. He's had 2 different games, 2 last games with 21 touches a game, over 83 total yards per game. I think this is going to be, whether they're leading the Falcons, they're not going to get blown out by the Falcons. So I think in whether neutral or positive game script, Pierce is being used more as well. So I'm keeping it open. I'm running back 21, and your point about the offensive line getting healthy, them getting Howard and Tunsil back, I think they're both at practice today. Huge for that offensive line and for Pierce. So not only do I think, am I keeping it open? Actually, I'm trying to buy low on Dameon Pierce.
Yeah. Also, I just think Dameon Pierce is really good as well. I think he's a really good running back, and he showed that last season.
Barry, how about Khalil Herbert, who's got your Commanders coming up? And when you look at Khalil Herbert, he was completely written off for Week 4, and he ends up having his best game of the season. Is that enough hope to maybe make him flex viable this week? I
don't think so. I'm going to keep him open begrudgingly. I'm at running back 27, so he's a little bit touchdown dependent here. The positives of Khalil Herbert is he looked really good last week. It felt like the entire offense took a turn in the right direction last week. Not just Justin Fields, all of it. I mean, Denver solves a lot of issues there, but like he had more rushing yards in Week 4 than the first 3 weeks combined. He got 78% of the team's running back rushes in Week 4. He played almost 80% of the snaps, as well as you see it there on your screen. So Khalil Herbert, who's had a double-digit target share in every game this season, which is positive. Like they've kept him on the field when they've gone pass heavy. They are almost a touchdown underdog to my Commanders and future Hall of Famer Sam Howell. So that's the only concern here. But the fact that Khalil Herbert played so well last week in a game in which they almost won and they should have won, and it's a short week, feels like they probably dial his workload back a little bit because again they're traveling on a short week. The game's in Washington, So I have him as a low-end flex, but I am keeping it open. So running back 27 for me this week.
Yeah, I got him at running back 24, going to leave it open as well. And this is what I'm noticing here, right? So he played the 78% snaps this week, out-touched Roschon Johnson 22-6, which is wild. In Week 1, he played, Khalil Herbert played 36% of the snaps. They were getting blown out by Green Bay. Week 3 versus the Chiefs, 55%, getting blown out by the Chiefs. His highest 2 percentages of snaps and games is where they were in the game. That's versus the Bucks. That's versus the Broncos. So I think it's like, depending on how this game go, that's what'll dictate how Khalil Herbert is used.
If I had to predict it, I would say somewhere in the 50 to 70% of the snaps. It's, again, he got such a heavy workload, and again, it's a short week and that kind of stuff. And again, like, my Commanders, jokes aside, are almost a touchdown favorite in this game, Jay.
Yeah, they are. And look, you hate starting your running backs against Sam Howell because you know that the other team's going to need to be throwing to keep up with the great Sam Howell at all times.
Thank you.
And they are dogs in this one, so potentially not game script friendly.
Yeah, but anyway, but Lawrence and I are both begrudgingly keeping it open.
Lawrence, what about
Khalil Herbert.
Najee Harris, who's got the Ravens this weekend? Listen, Najee was being drafted, as RB11 in terms of ADP. Right now, he's RB41 in points per game on the season.
Yeah, speaking of 11th drafted running back, the Ravens defense is 11th best against running backs.
Oh, nice.
Jalen Waddle. Jalen Warren.
Really good sound.
What was Najee Harris's ranking? Running back 41.
41 in points per game.
Jalen Warren is running back 26 right now. So I'm keeping that close. And I actually have him. I actually have Najee Harris ranked as running back 31 this week. So that's me being generous. But he has yet to score a touchdown. He has yet to play more than 57% of the snaps. So. And he's not getting any receiving work. That's all going to Jalen Warren. So I'm going to have to keep it close this week, especially with them not knowing what's going to happen at quarterback.
Yeah, it's not a good matchup against the Ravens defense that is trending towards elite. I will say that Jalen Warren's not doing anything on the ground. It's all through the air. He's averaging 3.4 yards per carry. Najee Harris, quietly, 4.3 yards per carry. He's been more efficient. He's been
slightly less terrible.
He's been slightly less terrible.
More efficient is no. He's been less terrible.
He doesn't have a touchdown, which you don't love, as someone
issue.
who is, at this point, kind of a touchdown-dependent guy.
Single-digit fantasy points in 3 out of 4 games this year.
It's not great, but he is still getting the work on the ground. He's got effectively double Warren's carries. It's just not a great matchup for him. So he's a guy I think you put in your flex and you don't feel great about it, man.
Yeah, I'm closing it out. I'm with Lawrence here. I'm at running back 30 in a week when there's a number of running backs on bye or banged up. But under 5 receiving yards in 3 out of 4 games, to your point, like he's not getting any work in this receiving game, so he does need to fall into the end zone to have any sort of value. I don't know what this offense is going to look like under Mitch Trubisky if he, in fact, starts. That's the expectation as we sit here today on a Wednesday. So for me, I'm just closing it out on pretty much every single team except yours, Jay. In our show league, you should start him.
I've got him. I think I am going to have to start him. It's more like Kendrick Bourne. The bench is pretty thin. Connor, in terms of the Steelers O-line, we talked a lot about the Giants O-line and the Texans O-line and how one team has managed its difficulties really well in Houston and the Giants are a complete disaster. The Steelers quietly have an awful O-line this year. Do you think there's any hope that they can get that better and make the offense more viable?
Not really, because how the Texans did it under Bobby Slowick, who DeMeco Ryans brought with him from San Francisco, is quick game, and Stroud is perfect on his drops. The ball comes out when he hits his drop. He has excellent field vision. He's very accurate. When you look at the Steelers right now, you can't say that about Kenny Pickett, even if it's Mitch Trubisky. You can't say that about Mitch Trubisky. And Matt Canada is honestly, this is harsh. He's one of the worst offensive coordinators
He
on
got that burner account out.
So I mean, no.
Blame Canada.
Blame Canada. I mean, to be honest with you, no. I don't feel that way. When you turn in terms of the scheme of the offense.
This team feels like it's underperformed its talent violently for 2 years on offense. There's no creativity. There's no. You look at I know the talent is different, but look at the Rams game. Look at how McVay is using his weapons versus how Matt Canada is using his. And I understand Stafford v. Pickett, but at the same time, there's just nothing to hold on to in this offense right now.
Yeah, I mean they're also beat up as we talked about. I mean, no Deontay Johnson, no Pat Freiermuth. So it's all a disaster. What I want to know is. The internet is so creative.
Yeah.
How has no one taken Steelers lowlights, and set them to blame Canada? The song from South Park,
of course,
the South
absolutely.
Park movie, blame Canada,
You can do it.
right?
It's Wednesday afternoon.
It's an all-time classic. I absolutely love that movie. It's a truly brilliant movie. The soundtrack is actually really good as well. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, there's a song on that soundtrack called "Blame Canada." And I don't know how somebody doesn't take that music. And
That's the chorus. Blame Canada.
Right, it totally
over
is.
and over
yeah,
again.
Exactly.
It honestly might have been done. We'll check after the show.
Yeah, maybe.
It just seems
It's
too.
it feels too obvious, but like I feel like it would have crossed my radar if it had happened.
Tough week for Matt Canada. Matt Canada and Daniel Jones. They're the two who are really struggling at the moment.
Let's stay with this game, but look on the other side with
And
the
Penn State
Ravens.
Blake.
And
Those are the three.
always.
In
Always
an
Penn
eternal
State Blake.
struggle, Penn State Blake.
Zay Flower.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.